He jolted at the sight of a trembling warhorse at the school's entrance, each ragged breath triggering raw panic. The moment he scanned its identity chip, a buried truth emerged that threatened to tear his entire life apart. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. It was a chilly autumn morning when the students of Oakfield Elementary first noticed the silhouette standing at the school's main gate. Mist curled in the fields beyond, giving the old building a dreamlike aura. Teachers and children alike paused in surprise, scanning the shadowy figure that seemed to sway in the faint sunlight. At first, some believed it was a stray horse or perhaps a trick of the fog. But then the beast stepped forward, and all who saw it realized there was something unusual about this creature. It stood tall, albeit with trembling limbs, its coat an uneven patchwork of gray and white scars. This was no common farm horse. It bore the weight of countless battles in its eyes. Mr. Alvarez, the school's gentle-hearted janitor, was the first adult on the scene. His morning routine always began before sunrise, sweeping corridors, checking classroom windows, and ensuring the school grounds were tidy. That day, he found himself drawn to the gate by the hushed whispers of early arriving students who huddled together, uncertain of what to make of the unexpected visitor. His initial reaction was concern. A horse of advanced age, standing as though it might collapse at any moment, was not something he could ignore. With careful steps he approached, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. The horse, though old and visibly weary, did not shy away. In the soft morning light, Mr. Alvarez noticed the horse's cloudy eyes and a ragged mane that hung like strands of silver thread. There were scars along its flank, old wounds that spoke of a life lived in hardship. On its left shoulder, a faint mark appeared, an outline of some insignia that time had nearly erased. The caretaker's heart throbbed with empathy. He gently patted the horse's neck, whispering soothing words. An unspoken bond formed in that moment, fueled by shared vulnerability and curiosity. The animal exhaled a deep breath, as though relieved to finally find someone who might show kindness. The principal, Mrs. Collins, arrived soon after, ushered by a flurry of teachers and anxious parents. At first, she worried about safety. After all, an unpredictable horse on school property could pose a risk to the children. But as she got closer, her stern expression softened. The old creature gave no sign of aggression. Rather, it stood in quiet dignity, as if waiting for permission to rest. Mrs. Collins drew Mr. Alvarez aside and spoke in hushed tones. "We can't just leave it here. It's in no condition to wander off, but we need to make sure the children stay safe." She proposed calling animal control or the local vet. Mr. Alvarez agreed, though his gaze lingered on the horse's sunken cheeks. "I'll try to keep it calm," he offered, stepping back to comfort the horse. Meanwhile, a few students had gathered at a safe distance, eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and concern. Some whispered rumors. Maybe it escaped from a farm, or it looks like a knight's horse from a storybook. Others speculated that it was lost or abandoned. None could guess the truth, that the tattered animal before them was far more extraordinary than any farm horse or fairy tale steed. When the local veterinarian, Dr. Morgan, finally arrived, he examined the horse with practiced hands. By this time, a gentle hush had settled around the courtyard. Classes had been delayed, and teachers ushered children inside, though many still peered through windows, unable to resist the lure of the peculiar scene. Dr. Morgan frowned as he ran his palm over the horse's ribs, counting each bone. The horse stood motionless, as if resigned to whatever fate awaited. Then Dr. Morgan's expression grew puzzled. He noticed a small metallic glimmer embedded beneath the old horse's weathered skin, some kind of microchip. It wasn't unusual for modern horses to be chipped, but this one seemed ancient. The veterinarian retrieved a handheld scanner from his bag and waved it gently over the horse's shoulder. A faint beep sounded, and the device displayed a code. Dr. Morgan's eyebrows arched in surprise. "This chip isn't from around here," he murmured, glancing at Mr. Alvarez. It's registered to a military database." The words sent a ripple of astonishment through those gathered. A murmur rose among the staff who had crept closer in curiosity. A military horse. How old did that make it? And how could it have found its way to the gates of a small-town elementary school? Mrs. Collins, still cautious but intrigued, asked Dr. Morgan what it meant. He explained that some cavalry or ceremonial war horses bore identification chips, especially in modern times, though older animals might have them if they served in memorial events or parades. This revelation cast the horse in an entirely new light. Suddenly, it was no longer just a lost or abandoned creature. It was a piece of living history. A hush fell as Dr. Morgan punched the code into his phone, attempting to access the relevant records. The seconds ticked by with agonizing slowness, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. At last, the veterinarian's phone displayed a set of credentials. His eyes skimmed the lines of text, and the color drained from his face. "This horse is registered under the name Regal Thunder," he said softly. "It belonged to a military stable that was decommissioned a decade ago. According to the records, Regal Thunder was once part of a ceremonial cavalry unit, but that unit hasn't been active for years. And here it says, the horse was believed lost in a conflict zone overseas." A wave of silence swept over the small crowd. The notion that Regal Thunder had somehow survived heartbreak and distance to appear here was staggering. Children crowded the windows, pressing their faces against the glass. Some teachers attempted to maintain order, but they too were transfixed by the unfolding story. In the midst of this, Mr. Alvarez gently stroked the horse's muzzle, recognizing in Regal Thunder's weary gaze a life spent in service overshadowed by pain. The caretaker felt a surge of protectiveness, a desire to shield the horse from further harm. Inside the main office, Dr. Morgan tried to contact the old military stable's guardians, but the phone numbers were out of service, and the listed addresses led to defunct offices. "It's as if whoever cared for this horse simply vanished," Dr. Morgan remarked, shaking his head. Mrs. Collins turned to Mr. Alvarez. "We can't turn our backs on it," she said firmly. "Whatever brought Regal Thunder here, this is where it belongs now, at least until we figure out its story." Her voice carried a resolution that mirrored the caretaker's own convictions. The children, overhearing fragments of the conversation, whispered in excitement, "A real war horse right here at their school." Already, some were crafting elaborate fantasies. Maybe it had come to teach them about bravery, or maybe it was lost and needed the help of kind-hearted people to find its way home. The staff resolved to provide food, shelter, and basic medical attention. For Mr. Alvarez, it felt like a calling. As the sun climbed higher, classes resumed, yet the excitement lingered. Students, buzzing with curiosity, peeked at the makeshift pen near the orchard. Mr. Alvarez laid fresh straw for Regal Thunder, feeling awed by the horse's silent story. This was just the beginning of a truly extraordinary journey. By late afternoon, the makeshift pen near the orchard became a curious gathering spot for children during recess. Even the older students, who normally chattered with teenage nonchalance, found themselves sneaking glances at the silent figure of Regal Thunder. The warhorse still looked exhausted, but there was a steadfast dignity in his stance. Every so often, one of the children would work up the courage to approach the fence. Mr. Alvarez, sensing their awe, reminded them to stay calm. He was determined to prevent any sudden noise or movement from startling the horse. Many of these children had grown up around farmland and were no strangers to animals. Yet Regal Thunder felt different, like a remnant from another world. The stories floated in hushed circles. Perhaps he carried secret messages in a hidden pouch, or maybe he had once galloped across distant deserts. Even the teachers, often busy with lesson plans and paperwork, found themselves gazing through classroom windows, momentarily swept into daydreams of cavalry processions and triumphant parades. An old war horse, battered by time, had chosen to appear at their doorstep. The mystery of it stirred imaginations far and wide. When the final bell rang that day, Mrs. Collins coordinated a plan with Dr. Morgan. She wanted to ensure Regal Thunder had somewhere safe to sleep for the night. The veterinarian explained that he could haul the horse in his trailer to a nearby shelter, but Mr. Alvarez objected. He insisted that sending the horse elsewhere might upset him further. In Mr. Alvarez's mind, Regal Thunder had come to them for a reason, and perhaps it was best not to uproot him too quickly. Eventually, they agreed to create a larger enclosure near the soccer field, away from the main footpaths. Under a setting sun, the school's gardener helped Mr. Alvarez lay down fresh straw and a bit of green hay. Dr. Morgan administered a vitamin shot, carefully bandaging an old scar that had reopened on the horse's foreleg. Several teachers lingered, offering moral support, while the last few students waved goodbye, reluctant to leave. In a gentle voice, Mr. Alvarez explained to Regal Thunder what they were doing, though he wasn't sure how much the horse could truly comprehend. The horse stood still, flicking his tail at the soft chirring of insects in the twilight. Nightfall brought a hush to the campus. Once the staff had gone, only Mr. Alvarez remained. He lived in a modest cottage behind the school, a small perk of his long-standing service. Knowing that Regal Thunder might feel unsettled, he set up a folding chair beside the newly assembled corral and stayed there for hours. The night air was crisp, and the stars glimmered overhead. For a time, he thought of the horse's improbable journey. How did it come to these gates with such precision, and why had it chosen this particular moment? The caretaker's mind wandered as a breeze rustled the nearby trees. By the glow of a flashlight, he watched Regal Thunder shift his weight, occasionally lowering his muzzle to nibble at the hay. Mr. Alvarez drifted in and out of a light doze, awakened occasionally by the sound of the horse's hooves against the ground. At one point, Regal Thunder let out a low, mournful sound, a barely audible whinny that carried a kind of loneliness. It made Mr. Alvarez's heart ache. He rose from the chair, approached the fence, and whispered, "Easy, boy. You're safe now." The horse blinked at him through half-lowered lids. A wave of compassion coursed through the caretaker as he recalled the unspeakable things this creature might have witnessed. Scarred flanks, chipped hooves, eyes that seemed to hold centuries. The caretaker gently rested a hand on the horse's neck, feeling the bony outline beneath the coarse coat. Neither spoke, but the shared warmth of that moment was enough. The next morning, children arrived to find that Regal Thunder had made it through the chilly night. A sense of relief spread through the school. No one had been sure if he was strong enough to survive. Mrs. Collins was quick to organize a new schedule, ensuring the area around the corral remained cordoned off for safety. Teachers assigned older students to keep an eye on the perimeter, more as a sign of trust than a real necessity. In fact, the horse showed no aggression. Still, they were cautious. During lunchtime, clusters of children circled the enclosure, trying to see if Regal Thunder would come near. A soft excitement buzzed in the air. Late that morning, Dr. Morgan reappeared, stepping out of his truck with a determined stride. He carried a folder stuffed with printed documents. "I've been doing some digging," he told Mrs. Collins when she intercepted him in the corridor. "And I've discovered a partial service record for Regal Thunder. It's incomplete, but I've got a contact who might help us." Mrs. Collins nodded gratefully, then led him to a quiet office so they could talk in private. Moments later, Mr. Alvarez was summoned. He arrived with sweat staining his collar, having just finished mopping the cafeteria. Concern etched his face as he waited for Dr. Morgan to speak. The veterinarian spread out a few pages on a small table. From what I can gather, Regal Thunder was assigned to a special cavalry unit about 10 years back. That unit disbanded around the same time the horse was reported missing. But the odd part is the location. It wasn't anywhere near our state. It wasn't even in our country. He tapped a printout with paragraphs of text. This suggests an international deployment, possibly a peacekeeping mission, though it's vague. Records mention a large-scale operation overseas, a base that was attacked and many of the horses were never recovered. Mr. Alvarez inhaled sharply. He could not imagine the hardships an animal might endure after a conflict, especially if it were lost in a foreign land. Dr. Morgan continued, I reached out to a retired major who once oversaw cavalry programs. He's promised to look into archived files. If we're lucky, he can connect us with someone who knows Regal Thunder's full story. While Dr. Morgan laid out these possibilities, Mrs. Collins twisted her wedding ring anxiously. We have to keep him here, she said softly. He's old. If he's truly gone through so much, it would be cruel to ship him off without proper care. But I also worry about the school's liabilities. She directed the last comment to Mr. Alvarez, who nodded. I'll keep watch, he replied, and I'm sure Dr. Morgan can help with medical checkups. The children are already protective of him. It was true. Rumors about Regal Thunder's background fueled a new wave of admiration among the students. Whispers of war hero flitted through hallways. The older children joked about forming a fan club. The younger ones drew pictures of a proud stallion wearing medals on his chest. Even parents, initially wary, began asking if they could help. A few offered to donate feed or pay for the horse's veterinary bills. The entire community seemed to rally around the mystery. Though Regal Thunder remained mostly docile, he sometimes showed signs of restlessness, shifting from hoof to hoof as if recalling distant bugle calls that once summoned him to a battlefield. Mr. Alvarez noticed that loud noises, like a slammed door or an unexpected shout, caused him to jerk his head up in alarm. The caretaker recognized the telltale flinch of a creature that had learned to be wary of sudden threats. In response, teachers placed signs around campus reminding everyone to keep noise to a minimum near the corral. The children followed these suggestions with surprising earnestness. No one wanted to add to the horse's burdens. A few days later, the retired major reached out to Dr. Morgan. His voice crackled over the phone line, and though Mr. Alvarez could only overhear fragments, each snippet gave him chills. Missing for years, the major repeated. Part of a protective detail, ended in chaos. They never found him. It seemed inconceivable that the horse had traveled countless miles through unknown territories to arrive here. Yet there he was, adjusting to quiet mornings punctuated by the shouts of children and the ring of the school bell. That afternoon, Mr. Alvarez fed Regal Thunder an apple as the setting sun turned the sky pink. He watched the horse chew slowly, pausing to breathe between bites. A single tear traced the caretaker's cheek. He thought of all the miles, all the hardships, and how this proud animal had endured so much. "You're safe now," he whispered, stroking the horse's muzzle. "We'll do right by you." By the week's end, Mrs. Collins scheduled a special assembly. She invited Dr. Morgan to share what they had learned about Regal Thunder, hoping to encourage empathy among the students. The children filed into the auditorium, their curiosity palpable. From a small stage, Dr. Morgan spoke in gentle tones about the horse's likely experiences, his uncertain origins, and the importance of kindness toward all living creatures. Eyes widened as he recounted that Regal Thunder had presumably served in a conflict zone. Gasps rose at the mention of dangerous missions, and a hush fell at the idea that the horse had struggled alone for so long. After the assembly, a line of quiet, respectful students formed outside the corral. Each took a turn to say hello, mindful of Mr. Alvarez's instructions not to crowd. Regal Thunder lowered his head in what seemed like cautious acceptance. Young voices murmured comforting words. Teachers kept a watchful eye, but no one felt threatened. On the contrary, there was an air of reverence, as if the horse's stoic calm assured them that hope could follow even the darkest trials. Though progress was encouraging, unanswered questions remained. Who had last cared for Regal Thunder? Was there an old handler who believed him dead years ago? Might this discovery bring closure or heartbreak to someone who once loved the horse dearly? In the coming days, Mr. Alvarez vowed to uncover the truth. He believed the school that had welcomed Regal Thunder deserved to know his full story. Little did he realize an unexpected visitor was already on the road, drawn by rumors of a certain warhorse turning up in the most unlikely place. 3 days passed, and Oakfield Elementary settled into an unusual rhythm. The presence of a warhorse on school grounds had become strangely normal, yet the air still crackled with curiosity. Each morning, Mr. Alvarez rose before dawn to check on Regal Thunder, offering fresh water and a handful of oats donated by a local feed store. Then he would walk around the corral, ensuring no fence posts had come loose in the night. Despite the early hour, Mrs. Collins would sometimes appear, wrapped in a shawl against the autumn chill, to watch the horse with him. Their conversations were quiet, often tinged with wonder at how seamlessly Regal Thunder had woven himself into the fabric of their daily routine. On the 4th day, a phone call rattled that calm. Dr. Morgan arrived earlier than usual, stepping out of his truck with an expression of quiet urgency. He found Mrs. Collins near the administration building, where she was organizing a pile of donated supplies, an outpouring of community support for the aging warhorse. "We've got news," the veterinarian said in a hushed tone. "I was contacted by a man who claims to know Regal Thunder from years back. He insists on coming here in person, says it's vital he see the horse with his own eyes." Mrs. Collins straightened at once. "Is this someone from the military stable?" "Not exactly," replied Dr. Morgan, flipping through notes on his phone. "He wouldn't give many details over email, but from what I can tell, he's some sort of historian or archivist. His name is Garrett Jones. Apparently, he's been researching cavalry units that served abroad. Said that rumors about a missing warhorse and a grade school sighting got back to him. Wants to confirm the story himself." Mrs. Collins's eyebrows rose. She glanced over at the corral where Regal Thunder flicked his ears at a curious squirrel darting across the grass. In a voice laced with caution, she said, "If he can shed light on this horse's past, we should let him come. But I want to be sure his intentions are good. We've already grown attached. I won't let anyone take Regal Thunder away on a whim." Dr. Morgan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll keep your concerns in mind. He's due tomorrow morning. Says he's driving in from 3 states over. I'll be here to meet him, and I'm sure Mr. Alvarez will insist on being present." That afternoon, the school hummed with anticipation. Teachers offered whispered explanations to students who asked about the rumored visitor. It was no secret that the entire community had rallied around Regal Thunder, forging a sense of ownership as though he belonged to them. Even so, no one wanted to stand in the way of reuniting the horse with any rightful caretaker, provided that caretaker had Regal Thunder's best interests at heart. When evening fell, Mr. Alvarez lingered by the corral, running a soft brush along the horse's flank. The caretaker marveled at how thick Regal Thunder's coat felt, now that he was receiving regular nourishment. Though still thin, the horse's ribs were less prominent, and a hint of renewed energy glimmered in his tired eyes. Mr. Alvarez leaned in close, speaking in a quiet undertone. "There's a man coming who might know your story, old boy. Don't worry, we won't let anything bad happen." Regal Thunder shook his mane as if acknowledging the caretaker's pledge, then dropped his muzzle to the hay scattered near his hooves. Night settled across Oakfield with a crisp, cool breeze rustling the autumn leaves. Mr. Alvarez retired to his cottage, but he found sleep elusive. He recalled Dr. Morgan's phone conversation. a determined voice on the other end, pressing to see the horse in person. A swirl of questions kept him awake. What if Regal Thunder truly had a handler who missed him? What if that person had spent years searching, believing the horse to be gone forever? The caretaker's empathy warred with his protective instincts. After all, the horse had found peace here. Surely they had to respect his original owners, but it pained him to think of Regal Thunder leaving the place where, at last, he could rest. Shortly after dawn the next day, a small sedan rolled into the school's parking lot. The sun was barely up, but Dr. Morgan and Mr. Alvarez were already out by the corral, checking on Regal Thunder. A tall, lean man with close-cropped hair stepped out of the vehicle. He wore well-worn jeans and a jacket patched with insignia. Approaching hesitantly, he paused to take in the campus, brick buildings, neat lawns, clusters of bright flowers. His gaze then drifted to the horse pen. For a moment, he seemed too overwhelmed to speak. Mr. Alvarez stepped forward, heart thumping. "Morning, sir," he said politely. "You must be Mr. Jones?" The man nodded. "Garrett Jones," he confirmed, extending a hand. Up close, Mr. Alvarez could see faint scars along the man's knuckles and the edges of tattoos peeking beneath his jacket sleeves. Garrett's demeanor was calm, but his eyes flickered with an intensity that suggested a lifetime spent uncovering stories few others knew. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me. I'm here about the horse." Dr. Morgan motioned toward the corral. "Regal Thunder's right over there. He's old and a bit skittish at times, but overall he's adjusting." Garrett let out a breath that sounded like a release of pent-up emotion. Stepping to the fence, he observed the horse for a full minute before speaking. "I've seen pictures," he whispered. "But I never thought... it's been so long since we heard anything. So many believed he was lost forever." He fell silent, as if the sight of the living, breathing animal before him was too much to process. Carefully, Mr. Alvarez unlatched the gate and signaled that Garrett could come in if he stayed calm. Regal Thunder lifted his head at the intrusion, ears pricked, tail swishing. The morning sun glinted on the pale scars that lined his side, a silent testimony to battles fought. Garrett approached slowly, murmuring something under his breath. The words were too soft for Mr. Alvarez to catch, but he guessed they were meant to soothe the horse. For a moment, Regal Thunder stiffened, then relaxed slightly, his muzzle dipping toward the stranger's open palm. "It's him," Garrett said at last, stroking the horse's neck. He was part of a cavalry demonstration group, assigned to an overseas campaign as a kind of morale booster. But things went downhill fast. The base was attacked. No one expected it. Horses panicked. Some were rescued, but Regal Thunder was one of those declared missing. Nobody knew if he'd been captured or killed. It's a miracle he ended up here. Dr. Morgan nodded. "We suspected something like that. The microchip data indicated an international deployment." Garrett gave a half smile, though sadness lingered in his eyes. "I wasn't his official handler, but I documented the unit's activities. I wrote articles, kept track of lineage records, that sort of thing. Whenever a horse like Regal Thunder arrived, I made sure we had the full story. When I heard rumors that a warhorse had wandered onto a school campus with a matching chip number, I had to see for myself." Mr. Alvarez felt a twinge of relief. This man did not appear to be a harsh military figure out to reclaim the horse by force. His concern seemed genuine, tinged with grief for all that had transpired. Garrett gently checked a scar on Regal Thunder's shoulder, shaking his head at the deep tissue beneath. "He must have endured unimaginable hardship," he murmured. "At his age, too. Warhorses rarely keep going this long, especially after so much trauma." Mrs. Collins, who had been observing from the other side of the fence, joined them. Her voice was calm but resolute. "Mr. Jones, we want to help Regal Thunder in any way we can, but we also need to protect him. He's part of our family now, and I can't simply hand him over to a stranger." Garrett pressed his lips together. "I understand. I'm not here to drag him away. I feel responsible for recording his story properly. There are historians and veterans who would be relieved, maybe comforted, to know he's alive, but we have to proceed carefully." Regal Thunder snorted softly, as though endorsing the notion of caution. They spent the next hours standing near the corral, while Garrett recounted what he knew. He explained that Regal Thunder's lineage traced back to a prestigious bloodline used for ceremonial duties. Handlers valued him for his calm under pressure, one of the reasons he was chosen to accompany troops overseas. Yet when chaos descended, logistical nightmares tore the unit apart. Garrett had returned stateside with many unanswered questions. Over time, he'd become a kind of wandering chronicler, trying to piece together the fates of the horses he once documented. Mrs. Collins asked quietly, "Do you believe anyone else might come looking for him?" The principal cast a sideways glance at Mr. Alvarez. The caretaker folded his arms, waiting for the answer. Garrett took a moment before responding. "Most of the old cavalry members have scattered. The stable was shut down. Records went missing. Funding got cut. If someone out there was still searching, you'd likely have heard from them by now. Honestly, most believe he perished years ago." Mr. Alvarez allowed himself a slow exhale. "So he can stay with us?" he ventured, trying to keep his tone neutral. A gentle smile touched Garrett's features. "If the school is prepared for the commitment, I see no reason to uproot him. He's clearly bonded with you. But let me call a few contacts. If there's any official next of kin, so to speak, we should let them know he's alive. At this point, it's more about closure than repossession." The tension in Mrs. Collins' shoulders eased visibly. "We'll do what's best for him," she said, and Regal Thunder, sensing the shift in mood, let out a soft whicker. Not long after, the group returned to Mrs. Collins' office. Students were already arriving for the school day, casting curious looks at Garrett as he passed through the corridors. Inside the office, they drafted a plan. The veterinarian would continue weekly checkups. Garrett would make inquiries to verify no former handler still had a legal claim. Meanwhile, the school would maintain the corral and keep the horses' environment stable. It felt like a hopeful compromise, one that balanced the horse's well-being with a desire to honor his past. Before he left, Garrett walked once more to the fence, removing an old metal dog tag from his jacket pocket. "I found this in the rubble years ago," he said, his voice shaky. "It doesn't officially belong to Regal Thunder, but it came from the same stable. It's got the same insignia." Carefully, he attached it to the corral gate. "Consider it a small token that ties him to his origins, and maybe a reminder that miracles do happen." Garrett Jones's visit stirred up a swirl of new curiosity throughout Oakfield Elementary. For the first time, the community understood that Regal Thunder wasn't just an old horse with a mysterious past. He was a survivor of chaos, a living echo from a disbanded unit that no longer existed. Students peppered their teachers with questions. They wanted to know about the wars, the missions, and the hardships that war horses endured. Though many details were too complex for young minds, the teachers found ways to honor their interest, weaving gentle lessons of empathy and respect into their language arts and history classes. Every morning, Mr. Alvarez would greet Regal Thunder with calm determination. He'd refill the horse's water trough, scatter fresh hay, and check the corral gate where Garrett had hung the battered old dog tag. The metal glinted in the light, a quiet reminder of the extraordinary journey that led the horse here. In this tranquil routine, Mr. Alvarez found solace. He'd catch himself whispering little updates to Regal Thunder, about the new fence posts, about a child who brought an apple from home, or about the phone call from Dr. Morgan saying there were still no new leads on any legal owners. The horse would listen with a patient gaze as if these mundane details mattered, and to the caretaker they did. In the staff lounge, teachers chatted about possible ways to incorporate Regal Thunder's story into the curriculum. Mrs. Collins, while supportive, had one main concern. It was only a matter of time before word spread beyond their little town. Already, a local newspaper had called the school, requesting an interview. The principal feared a media blitz would disrupt the students' routines or stress the horse, who remained easily startled by loud noises. She wanted to protect Regal Thunder from further turmoil, but balancing that wish with the public's growing curiosity proved difficult. Around midweek, a small article appeared in the local press titled, "Warhorse in Elementary School. A Legend Finds New Life." It was a respectful piece penned by a young journalist who interviewed Dr. Morgan and briefly mentioned Mr. Alvarez and Mrs. Collins. The journalist wrote that the horse had been discovered at the school gates and confirmed to have a military background. She also described the outpouring of community support. The final lines hinted that more details might emerge, leaving readers with a sense of hopeful anticipation. Naturally, the article prompted a flood of calls. Parents, local businesses, even a few out-of-state enthusiasts reached out, some wanting to donate, others eager to see Regal Thunder in person. Mrs. Collins screened these requests with care, not wanting to turn the school into a spectacle. She allowed only a handful of visitors, typically those who offered practical help, like a retired veterinarian who brought specialized feed pellets for aging horses. Still, the phone rang incessantly. Meanwhile, each time Dr. Morgan spoke to Garrett, the archivist would sigh and confirm there were no significant new developments. No one else seemed to be laying claim to Regal Thunder. A week later, on a chilly Friday morning, a teacher named Ms. Hampton led her third-grade class out to the corral for a supervised visit. The children clustered near the fence, clutching notebooks in which they'd drawn pictures of soldiers and horses. "Remember, keep your voices low," Ms. Hampton reminded them. "We don't want to startle him." Small faces peered at the gentle giant, who flicked an ear at their approach. One brave boy, Mateo, raised a hand. "Can we feed him carrots, miss?" In response, Ms. Hampton retrieved a small bundle of carrot sticks she'd brought, carefully handing them out. She showed each child how to hold the treat flat on their palms. Regal Thunder sniffed at their offering before nibbling carefully. Delighted squeals had to be hushed lest they disturb the horse's cautious calm. Afterward, the children sketched furiously, trying to capture each line of the horse's posture, the angle of his muzzle, the worn scars across his flank. Ms. Hampton encouraged them to describe what they saw. One student wrote that Regal Thunder's eyes looked like they were full of old stories. Another described his coat as the color of storm clouds. Everyone seemed determined to record even the tiniest detail. The teacher smiled, recognizing how the horse's presence enriched the children's creative impulses. Beneath the surface, though, a question lingered. What if someone came to take him away? That afternoon, Mrs. Collins summoned Mr. Alvarez to her office. He arrived to find her looking grave, her desk strewn with letters and pamphlets. "We've received offers," she began, tapping a stack of papers. "Riding clubs, historic preservation societies, even a film producer who wants to feature Regal Thunder in a documentary about war horses. Some of these proposals are generous. But you know my stance. We can't let him be turned into an exhibit, not after everything he's been through." Mr. Alvarez shifted from foot to foot, trying to read her expression. "What do you propose we do?" She sighed. "First, I'd like us to officially adopt him under the school's name. Dr. Morgan says that if there's no legal owner stepping forward, we can file the necessary paperwork. It might protect him from being claimed by anyone who just wants to exploit his story. But I also want to ensure We have the funds and space to care for him long term. The caretaker nodded. I agree. We can't let him be shuffled around anymore. He's safe here and the children adore him. The community's behind us too. Mrs. Collins' lips curved into a faint smile. Yes, but we must be sure we're prepared. Horses cost more than oats and hay. There are vet bills, potential emergency surgeries, specialized dietary needs as he ages further. I think we need to start a proper fund. Maybe set up a small donation program, involve the PTA. Mr. Alvarez hesitated a moment, then spoke. What if we reached out to some local sponsors quietly, folks we trust? We could explain the situation, set up a stable that's more permanent. I'm willing to do extra maintenance if needed. The principal's eyes brightened. That's a wonderful idea. I'll talk to the PTA board on Monday. We have a meeting scheduled. Perhaps we can also organize a small fundraiser to help cover expenses. But we'll do it on our own terms, not because we owe anyone who wants to make him a spectacle. And so they started planning. A flurry of discreet phone calls, letters to friendly local businesses, and brainstorming sessions with the PTA unfolded over the following days. News spread that the school sought help in caring for Regal Thunder, though in a restrained way. Instead of fanfare, they asked for quiet support, like a donation of building materials for a better stable or contributions to his medical fund. During these hectic days, Mr. Alvarez took solace in his daily routine with the horse. Each morning, before the children arrived, he'd step into the enclosure and check Regal Thunder's overall condition. The horse had a new sparkle in his eye, and some days he even whinnied in greeting. The caretaker recognized small improvements, a healthier coat, a steadier walk. Part of him wondered if Regal Thunder sensed that people were fighting for him now, just as he once must have fought in distant conflicts. The thought gave Mr. Alvarez a surge of quiet pride. One crisp afternoon, an unmarked van trundled up the school driveway. Mrs. Collins rushed out, prepared to confront any uninvited media crew. Instead, a stout man emerged bearing a business card from a well-known local construction company. Heard you might need lumber for a stable, he said. I've got a couple of guys who can volunteer this weekend. Let's just say we owe a favor to old Mr. Alvarez. He once helped fix our workshop roof after a storm. Mr. Alvarez blinked in surprise. He'd nearly forgotten that small act of kindness. Now it was paying him back in a way he never imagined. By late evening the following Saturday, the school lawn rumbled with the sounds of hammering and sawing. Teachers, parents, and even a few older students pitched in. Under Mr. Alvarez's guidance, they constructed a sturdy shelter near the orchard, complete with proper insulation for colder months. Regal Thunder watched from a safe distance, ears flicking at each clang of metal and buzz of power tools. The community bustled around him, determined to provide not just a temporary pen, but a real home. At some point, Mrs. Collins and Dr. Morgan paused to watch Mr. Alvarez working atop a ladder, measuring beams with a steady hand. He seemed younger somehow, animated by purpose. The veterinarian nudged the principal. You notice he hasn't complained once about the long hours? She nodded. It's almost as though he and Regal Thunder were meant to find each other. Just before midnight, after a final bout of sawing, the team stepped back to admire their work. A sturdy wooden structure now stood, complete with a small storage area for feed and a softly lit interior that wouldn't disturb the horse's rest. Everyone wiped sweat from their brows, beaming at the result of their shared effort. Let's call it a night, Mrs. Collins announced, her voice crackling with fatigue. Thank you, everyone. This means more than I can say. Quiet applause rippled among the small crew. Before leaving, Mr. Alvarez led Regal Thunder inside to let him sniff the new walls. The horse ambled in, snorting at the fresh cedar smell. With careful deliberation, he settled on the soft bedding, as if giving silent approval. That evening, The moon cast silver shadows across the school grounds. Mr. Alvarez lingered by the stable door, listening to Regal Thunder's slow breathing as he rested. The caretaker's own muscles ached and sawdust clung to his hair, but he felt an immense satisfaction. He thought back to the day the horse first appeared at Oakfield Elementary's gate. None of them could have predicted the changes he would bring. The camaraderie, the shared sense of purpose, the gentle reminder that even a war-worn spirit could find peace. "Welcome home," Mr. Alvarez whispered into the stillness. The horse exhaled softly, his ears shifting toward the caretaker's voice. And in the hush of that moment, man and horse found a kind of unspoken harmony in the simplest of truths. They had saved each other. Sunlight filtered through the windows of Oakfield Elementary on the Monday morning after the barn raising, casting warm squares of light onto the polished floors. A light frost had dusted the grass overnight, and children arrived bundled in jackets, their breath fogging in the crisp air. Yet no one complained about the cold because everyone's excitement was focused on the new stable behind the orchard. Those who had missed the weekend's construction hurried to see Regal Thunder's upgraded home, whispering in awe when they discovered how much larger and sturdier it was compared to his old enclosure. Mrs. Collins allowed small groups of students, supervised by their teachers, to visit the stable in orderly rotations. Each time the door swung open, they peered inside, quietly thrilled to find the warhorse adjusting well. Regal Thunder seemed comfortable in his expanded space, stepping on fresh bedding with minimal signs of anxiety. Mr. Alvarez, who had worked late to finish last-minute touches, basked in the children's admiring smiles. He stood by the entrance, politely reminding them to move slowly. The horse's ears twitched and swiveled to follow the rustling of winter coats, but he remained calm. Throughout the day, Ms. Hampton's third graders, Ms. Lane's kindergartners, and even Mr. Price's lively sixth-grade class took turns. They approached with hushes and giggles, extended gentle pats if Mr. Alvarez nodded his approval, and some whispered their thanks to Regal Thunder, as though he had done them a great honor simply by being there. It was a special kind of reverence, and the caretaker noticed that even the rowdiest children seemed transformed in the horse's presence. Regal Thunder, for his part, accepted the attention with quiet dignity. He would lower his head, sniff at outstretched palms, then return to nibbling his hay as the students looked on. By lunchtime, Mrs. Collins stepped into her office to find a stack of new letters. Some were from local families pledging modest monthly donations toward Regal Thunder's upkeep. Others came from more distant addresses, names she didn't recognize, offering everything from riding gear to heartfelt thanks for giving the horse a second chance. One letter, written in careful cursive, caught her eye. It came from a woman named Belinda Marsden, who claimed to be the widow of an Army colonel once stationed overseas. The letter expressed deep gratitude for the horse's safety and offered to share any historical records she might have. Mrs. Collins set it aside for Dr. Morgan to review. She felt a twinge of relief that most messages were supportive, not intrusive. Even so, the school's phone never stopped ringing. Late that afternoon, while Mrs. Collins was coaching the basketball team in the gym, Mr. Alvarez had to pick up a persistent call in her office. He half expected a reporter on the other end, but instead he heard Garrett Jones's familiar voice. "Any updates?" Garrett asked. "I've been fielding calls from a couple of organizations myself, veterans groups mostly, who heard rumors of Regal Thunder's rescue. Some want to send donations, others want to visit. I'm doing my best to keep it all organized and protect the horse's privacy." Mr. Alvarez found himself exhaling in relief. "Good to hear your voice. Things have been busy but stable. He's thriving in the new barn. The children love him. We haven't had a single serious threat to his well-being, just a flood of well-meaning folks who want to be part of his story." Garrett chuckled ruefully. "That's the thing about war horses. People can't resist the combination of history and heroism. I'm glad everyone's welcoming him with kindness. If any official claim arises, though, please let me know. I've got more old cavalry contacts I can reach out to, but so far it's radio silence. They chatted a bit longer, exchanging small details about the horse's daily routine and the steps being taken to file for official ownership under the school's name. When Mr. Alvarez finally hung up, a warm satisfaction filled his chest. Regal Thunder's future, once so uncertain, now seemed anchored in the collective care of people who genuinely wanted what was best for him. Not every call was so reassuring, however. Early Tuesday morning, before sunrise, the phone rang again in the principal's office. Mr. Alvarez, already on site to de-ice the walkways, picked up with a polite greeting. A gruff male voice asked for Mrs. Collins. The caretaker explained that she wouldn't arrive for another hour. Without giving his name, the caller demanded to know if the school had proof of ownership and insisted the horse should be handed over to the right people. Something in the man's tone made the hairs on Mr. Alvarez's neck stand on end. His words were clipped and sharp, bristling with impatience. Mr. Alvarez tried to respond calmly, saying they were in the process of legal paperwork and that no one else had come forward with valid documentation. The caller, sounding irritated, muttered, "We'll see about that," before hanging up. A prickle of worry lodged itself in the caretaker's thoughts as he set down the phone. He carefully noted the time of the call, along with the man's accent, which hinted at a region hundreds of miles away. Once Mrs. Collins arrived, he recounted the exchange. She pursed her lips, concern shadowing her face. They agreed not to overreact, but she asked him to keep track of any further calls like it. "We need to be sure we're not dealing with someone who thinks they have a right to Regal Thunder just because of an old connection," she said. "We want to follow due process." That same day, in the hustle of classes and staff meetings, Mr. Alvarez slipped outside whenever he could, drawn to the stable as though the old horse might sense his unease. Each time he arrived, Regal Thunder turned his head, ears flicking forward, as if greeting a friend. The caretaker found comfort in those quiet moments. The horse, oblivious to phone calls and bureaucratic hassles, simply pressed his muzzle against Mr. Alvarez's coat pocket, hoping for a carrot or sugar cube. He exhaled warmth that dispelled the caretaker's anxiety, and for a moment the world felt simpler. But the next morning brought another unsettling development. While scanning the perimeter before students arrived, Mr. Alvarez spotted a dusty SUV parked across the street. At first, he dismissed it as a passing traveler or a parent waiting for drop-off time. But throughout the day, he noticed that the vehicle never moved. During his lunch break, he ventured closer to see if anyone inside needed assistance. The driver's seat appeared empty, the windows rolled up tight. No one else was in sight. Something about its presence seemed off, like a silent watchman waiting for an opportunity. Mrs. Collins listened with a furrowed brow when he reported this. "Let's keep an eye on it," she said. "I'll inform the local police about a suspicious vehicle, just so we have it on record." Word spread discreetly among the staff, and teachers reminded older students to be mindful, but not to panic. Through it all, Regal Thunder remained unperturbed in his stable, greeting the children with soft wickers, entirely unaware of the tension swirling around him. That evening, shortly after the final dismissal bell, the SUV disappeared. None of the teachers had seen who drove away or when, and no one came forward to claim a connection. Mrs. Collins and Mr. Alvarez shared a long look. It might have been a coincidence, they told each other, or perhaps just someone curious about the horse's legend, but each felt an undercurrent of dread. They decided to double-check the corral's security. Mr. Alvarez replaced the latch with a sturdier padlock. Mrs. Collins insisted on installing a modest outdoor camera that pointed toward the stable entrance. "Just in case," she muttered, her tone half apologetic and half resolute. Still, Life at the school continued with a semblance of normalcy. Wednesday's recess found older students practicing soccer drills near the orchard, glancing occasionally at the stable. Some waved to Mr. Alvarez, who sat on a bench beside the corral while Regal Thunder dozed in a patch of sunshine. Every so often, the caretaker thought about the anonymous caller and the SUV. Despite the worry gnawing at his mind, he forced himself to smile at the kids. He wanted them to remember Regal Thunder's presence as a gift, not a burden. Later that afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived, someone Mr. Alvarez recognized as the local police sergeant. The officer had come to deliver a courtesy update. "We've done a couple passes by the school," he told Mrs. Collins in the main office. "No sign of suspicious activity, but keep us informed." Then, lowering his voice, he added, "You folks are local heroes, giving that horse a home. Everyone in town loves the story. If something's up, we'll make sure you're not alone." The principal offered a grateful nod, though tension still lined her face. After the officer left, she walked outside to stand by the stable, arms folded against the cool breeze. She found Mr. Alvarez checking the horse's water supply. In the quiet that stretched between them, they acknowledged the weight of recent events. "We can't let fear take over," Mrs. Collins said at last. "Regal Thunder means too much to everyone, especially the children." Mr. Alvarez brushed a wisp of hay from the horse's flank. "Agreed. We'll stay vigilant, but he's worth it." The horse glanced over, dark eyes reflecting the mellow light of late afternoon. Then, as if to break the moment's seriousness, Regal Thunder nudged the caretaker's arm, seeking attention. Mr. Alvarez chuckled softly and patted the horse's neck. That night, the caretaker stayed late again, offering Regal Thunder a dinner of fortified grains. He leaned on the stable door, recalling the first time he'd found the horse trembling at the school gate. Now, after so many days of steady care, Regal Thunder appeared confident in his surroundings. The caretaker felt a fierce surge of protectiveness. Nothing would drive them apart if he could help it. Still, the memory of that gravelly voice on the phone made his stomach twist. Outside, the wind carried a faint hollow whistle through the trees. Mr. Alvarez tried to reassure himself that no harm would come. Tomorrow, he decided, they would all move forward with the adoption process in earnest. Paperwork, legal steps, the whole protocol. Regal Thunder belonged here, and no threatening caller or prowling stranger would change that. By the following morning, Oakfield Elementary was brimming with quiet excitement. Word had spread that Mrs. Collins, with Dr. Morgan's help, planned to finalize the adoption paperwork for Regal Thunder. Parents lingered in the hallways after dropping off their children, eager to learn how the old warhorse's future was shaping up. A few offered extra help with stable chores. Others slipped envelopes into the main office, small donations to cover expenses. Despite the lingering worry about the mysterious phone calls and the SUV, a spirit of collaboration pervaded the halls, as if protecting Regal Thunder had become a collective mission. Mr. Alvarez rose before dawn to complete his usual tasks. He couldn't shake a faint sense of unease that clung to him like the lingering darkness in the sky. He made certain the barn door was locked and double-checked the newly installed camera pointed at the entrance. As the first blush of sunlight crept over the fields, the caretaker opened a bale of hay and spread it across the stable floor. Regal Thunder watched him, shifting slightly on his forelegs, letting out a soft nicker. Mr. Alvarez gave the horse an affectionate pat on the neck, then whispered, "We're taking good care of you, old friend. No one's going to change that." Inside the school, Mrs. Collins was already seated at her desk, rifling through a neat stack of documents. She paused to massage her temples, then looked up at Dr. Morgan, who'd arrived early to assist. "We have the basic adoption form, plus the veterinarian certification of health. We'll need to file these with the county clerk," she explained, "and after that, we can legally be recognized as Regal Thunder's guardians." Dr. Morgan nodded. I'm certain the county will cooperate. I've provided all the necessary medical records, and we have Garrett Jones on standby in case we need historical context. If the stable where Regal Thunder was once housed was officially decommissioned, I doubt anyone can claim legal ownership now. Mrs. Collins let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. I hope you're right. The last thing I want is for some organization to swoop in, brandishing old documents. We'll do everything by the book, but there's a nagging worry in the back of my mind. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Your caution is justified, but you've done everything possible. Between the school board's support and the local authorities aware of the situation, no one is going to forcibly remove a horse that's been officially adopted. She managed a small smile. Let's finalize these forms then. The sooner we take them to the clerk's office, the better. They spent the next half hour reviewing each page, double-checking the signature lines. By the time the bell rang for first period, Mrs. Collins's desk was free of clutter save for the folder of finished paperwork. Mr. Alvarez, breathless from a final sweep of the cafeteria, arrived just as Dr. Morgan stood up to leave. Together, they discussed who would drive to the courthouse. It was agreed that Dr. Morgan, having a flexible schedule, would make the trip once classes settled and the morning rush eased. Before he left, the veterinarian accompanied Mr. Alvarez to the stable. The caretaker meticulously showed him the new locks and recounted the odd phone call. Dr. Morgan frowned. Let's stay vigilant. If that caller tries anything else, or if you see that SUV again, don't hesitate to ring the police. Then, with a reassuring nod, he headed toward his truck, the precious folder tucked under his arm. The rest of the morning brought a comforting sense of routine. Students bustled into class, teachers instructed with lively energy, and the stable attracted its usual circle of admirers during recess. In the early afternoon, Ms. Hampton's third graders gathered by the orchard, reading poems they'd written about bravery. Regal Thunder stood within sight, swishing his tail lazily, seemingly content to act as their silent muse. Midway through these readings, Mrs. Collins emerged, her face bright with relief. She had just taken a call from Dr. Morgan confirming that the county clerk had accepted the adoption paperwork without hesitation. They said we'll receive an official record in about a week, she announced to Ms. Hampton, who passed the news along to the children. A gentle cheer rose among them, tempered only by their awareness that Regal Thunder was easily startled by loud noises. The horse pricked his ears but remained calm, munching on a patch of grass near the fence line. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, the phone rang once again. This time, Mrs. Collins answered it herself. The line crackled, as though it came from a distant or rural area. A man spoke in halting phrases, explaining that he'd read about the horse in a small veterans newsletter. Unlike the gruff caller from before, his voice was weary but polite. I served in the same unit, he said. We were told Regal Thunder was lost in the chaos. I just wanted to say thank you. My name is Corporal Downs. That horse once saved me from a stampede. I can't prove it, but I swear he recognized me. I owe him my life. Mrs. Collins listened quietly, her heart swelling with compassion. He went on to describe a moment during a training exercise when Regal Thunder had stood firm while other horses bolted. That small act of steadiness prevented a frightened mount from plowing into Corporal Downs. I can't travel these days, he concluded softly, but could you tell him I'm grateful? The principal promised to do so, her voice thick with emotion. After they hung up, she lingered at her desk for a moment, moved by the impact this single horse had on so many people. That evening, after the students had gone, Mrs. Collins recounted the conversation to Mr. Alvarez. The two of them were tidying the hallway, discussing the day's events in hushed voices. Sometimes I forget how far his influence stretches, the principal murmured. Hearing these stories, people he's touched, lives he changed, I realize adopting him wasn't just a kindness to the horse. It's a service to those who cared about him once. Mr. Alvarez nodded solemnly. I'll let him know. If it's possible for a horse to sense gratitude from far away, I bet Regal Thunder already does. He smiled, though the memory of the threatening call still nagged at him. Let's keep guard for a while longer, just in case. She agreed. I spoke to the police sergeant again. They're making random patrols at night to ensure no suspicious activity occurs near the school. And the new camera feed is recorded now. I feel safer. As darkness fell, Oakfield became a tapestry of soft porch lights and glowing windows. Mr. Alvarez finished his chores, then took a flashlight and headed out behind the orchard. The stable's silhouette loomed gently under the moonlight, beams of fresh wood still smelling of cedar. A single lamp inside illuminated Regal Thunder's relaxed form. When the horse noticed him, he raised his head. The caretaker slipped inside, latching the door behind him. He hung the flashlight on a hook, casting a subtle glow across the straw-covered floor. All ours now, he whispered, placing a hand on Regal Thunder's neck. No more doubts. We made it official, and you've got a whole family here watching out for you. The horse exhaled a calm breath, shifting his weight as though settling deeper into comfort. Mr. Alvarez brushed his mane with slow, methodical strokes, each pass of the brush symbolic of reassurance. He thought about Corporal Downes's call, about all the people who might never see Regal Thunder again yet cherished what he represented. In that moment, the caretaker felt not just ownership, but a profound responsibility to honor everything Regal Thunder stood for. Time slipped by as he groomed the horse's coat, occasionally pausing to listen to the hush of the orchard. Overhead, the moon slid behind a swirl of clouds. Mr. Alvarez told stories in a gentle murmur, recalling the day the children built a fence to keep rabbits out of the garden, or how Miss Hampton's third graders wrote poems about loyalty. Regal Thunder flicked an ear as if absorbing every word. Then, with a final pat, Mr. Alvarez doused the lamp, grabbed his flashlight, and slipped out into the cool night air, feeling more at peace than he had in days. The peace was short-lived. On his way back to the main building, he noticed a faint pair of headlights cresting a hill beyond the school. Mr. Alvarez squinted, uncertain if it was a police patrol or a random passerby. The vehicle's headlights flashed once, perhaps a trick of reflection, and then disappeared behind a row of trees. The caretaker's pulse quickened, and he paused near a hedge, half expecting the car to circle back. For several minutes he stood still, listening for the growl of an engine, but the world remained silent. Slowly, his heartbeat steadied. Perhaps he was overreacting. Nonetheless, unease hovered at the edges of his mind as he locked up for the night. He gave a final glance toward the orchard, saw only the dark outline of the stable, and felt a knot in his chest. With the horse's adoption paperwork officially in order, he told himself they'd have little to fear. But a quiet voice inside warned him that not everyone respected such boundaries. He would sleep lightly, ready to protect Regal Thunder if needed. That night, the caretaker's dreams were filled with images of a gray horse galloping across an empty battlefield, pursued by faceless figures. Each time Regal Thunder faltered, Mr. Alvarez reached out, trying to shield him. Yet the figures drew closer. In the morning, the caretaker woke covered in sweat, relieved to realize it was only a nightmare. But he couldn't quite shake the feeling that the real danger might lurk just beyond the orchard, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Mr. Alvarez woke before his alarm, stirred by the last traces of that unsettling dream. Though his pulse still thudded from the imagined pursuit, he reminded himself that Regal Thunder was safe, asleep in the newly built stable behind Oakfield Elementary. Rising from bed, he dressed quickly and slipped outside. The autumn dawn glowed in faint shades of pink and orange, a tranquil contrast to the anxiety he couldn't quite shake. Making his way to the stable, he reminded himself that they had done everything right. Secure locks, official adoption papers, supportive staff, and parents. Still, the tension lingered like a splinter in his mind. He reached the stable to find Regal Thunder awake, snuffling at a few stray wisps of hay on the floor. The old horse lifted his head and whickered softly, his breath visible in the cold air. At once, Mr. Alvarez felt the dream's dread ebb. There, in the first glow of morning, the horse's calm presence radiated a reassurance that words failed to capture. "Morning, boy," he said, stepping inside to check the water bucket. As he replaced it with fresh water, Regal Thunder nudged his elbow playfully. The caretaker chuckled, brushing his palm over the horse's muzzle. "We've got each other's backs, don't we?" In the main building, Mrs. Collins arrived soon after, juggling her usual stack of papers and a steaming cup of coffee. She passed the staff lounge, offering quick greetings before stopping by the office to glance at the security monitor. The newly installed camera showed a black and white feed of the stable's entrance. At that hour, it captured only Mr. Alvarez moving about calmly, the faint shape of the horse in the background. Satisfied, she joined a few early teachers for a brief meeting, fielding updates about upcoming tests and field trips. But behind every task, a flicker of concern persisted. Whatever presence had unsettled them might still hover on the periphery. Mid-morning, a mild chaos descended as Ms. Lane's kindergartners, clad in bright jackets, scurried outside for an impromptu nature lesson near the orchard. Tiny voices filled the crisp air, marveling at fallen leaves and chirping birds. The stable rose in the distance, its wooden beams casting neat shadows across the grass. While Ms. Lane encouraged the children to gather acorns for a counting game, a few gazed longingly at Regal Thunder's enclosure. One small boy piped up, "Can we say hi?" Ms. Lane hesitated, then agreed to a brief, supervised visit. With her usual gentle guidance, she lined them up single file and led them to the fence. Mr. Alvarez, already there to tidy the area, greeted them warmly. "Good morning, everyone," he said, bending to address the kindergartners at eye level. "Regal Thunder likes quiet hellos. Remember to keep your voices nice and soft." He swung open the stable door a fraction, and the children peered in with wide-eyed wonder. One little girl giggled when Regal Thunder's whiskers brushed her tiny palm. Another child asked if the horse got lonely at night. "I think he rests quite happily," Mr. Alvarez replied with a smile. "He knows we're all here for him." Ms. Lane's face glowed with appreciation at the caretaker's gentle way with her students, and the group departed with hearts full of admiration. Around lunchtime, a distinctive black car rolled into the school's parking lot, drawing wary glances from several staff members. It wasn't the dusty SUV Mr. Alvarez had seen before, but something about its tinted windows and polished exterior set nerves on edge. Mrs. Collins notified the front office that she would handle any unexpected visitors, then headed outside to greet whoever stepped forth. To her relief, a silver-haired woman emerged with a friendly wave. She introduced herself as Belinda Marsden, the widow who had written weeks earlier. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said, voice quavering slightly. "I tried calling, but the line was busy. I decided to drive up, brought a few documents that might help." Though initially cautious, Mrs. Collins recognized a sincere warmth in Belinda's demeanor. "Of course, welcome," she said, leading her inside. Over hot tea, Belinda explained that her late husband, Colonel Marsden, once supervised a cavalry training program. She opened a leather folder filled with yellowed certificates and black and white photographs. "I'm not sure if any of these relate directly to Regal Thunder," she explained, her eyes misting. "But my husband cared deeply for these horses. He believed that each one had a soul worth protecting." Mrs. Collins turned each page with reverence. Some photos depicted proud horses in formation. Others showed troopers smiling as they groomed their mounts. Occasionally, a horse resembling Regal Thunder appeared in the background, though the images were too blurred to be certain. "It's possible," Mrs. Collins murmured, pointing to a snapshot of a tall gray stallion near a tent, "that this could be him, but the angle's tricky." Belinda nodded. "That's from a staging area overseas. Several were thoroughbreds, but a few had distinctive markings." She tapped a faint scar visible on the horse's flank in one photo. "I've wondered if it matches the lines on your old boy. Maybe the veterinarian could compare them." Drawn by mention of the horse, Mr. Alvarez entered the office. Belinda lifted her gaze and broke into a kind smile. "You must be the one caring for him," she said softly. "Thank you for your kindness." He replied that Regal Thunder seemed to be thriving under the school's collective watch, and Belinda's eyes shone with gratitude. She offered to donate any leftover gear her husband had kept: bridles, blankets, grooming tools, perhaps even a saddle, though she wasn't certain it would fit. "Colonel Marsden always insisted on the best equipment," she added. "It might help keep him comfortable as he ages." As they spoke, students passed by the office window, some pausing curiously to see who was visiting. Mrs. Collins excused herself to handle a minor disciplinary matter, leaving Mr. Alvarez to chat with Belinda. The conversation turned to the deeper bond between a horse and those who cared for it during conflicts. "My husband once told me," Belinda recalled, "that a war horse doesn't just carry a soldier's weight. It carries his hopes, his fears, even his regrets. Caring for them properly was like caring for part of the soldier's soul." Mr. Alvarez found himself profoundly moved, imagining Regal Thunder traversing harsh terrain, carrying burdens beyond the physical. He remembered the horse's flinches at sudden noises, the scars along his flank, and a softness in his eyes that hinted at sorrow. "Sometimes I wonder if he remembers every person he carried," Mr. Alvarez murmured. "We've heard from a few veterans who believe he saved their lives. It's humbling to stand near him." After a quiet pause, Belinda gently set the folder aside. "I'd like to see him, if that's all right," she said. Mr. Alvarez guided her out toward the stable, pointing out the orchard fence, and the newly constructed barn. The woman's features grew solemn as she took in the scene, a place of peaceful routine so different from the dangers Regal Thunder had once known. At the stable door, she inhaled deeply, then stepped inside. Regal Thunder looked up from his trough, ears pricked. Belinda's breath caught in her throat. "He's as majestic as I imagined," she whispered. Timidly, she extended her hand. The horse lifted his muzzle, nostrils flaring, then relaxed as if welcoming her presence. Belinda stroked his neck with trembling fingers. There was no flamboyant display, no dramatic reaction, only a quiet recognition, as if Regal Thunder sensed her gentleness. Her eyes glossed with tears. "You've lived through so much," she murmured. "Thank you for making it home." They spent several minutes in that hush, the woman and the warhorse bonded by intangible threads of memory and respect. Outside, the afternoon sun spilled across the orchard, the sky a brilliant expanse of pale blue. Finally, Belinda stepped back, blinking away tears. "I'm sorry," she said to Mr. Alvarez. "He just reminds me of all my husband stood for, all the nights he worried over every horse missing in action." Mr. Alvarez laid a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "No need to apologize. We're honored that you shared these memories with us. He belongs to all of you who cared enough to keep searching." By day's end, Belinda bid farewell, promising to return with the spare tack and supplies. Mrs. Collins walked her out to the parking lot, expressing gratitude for the historical documents. Once the woman's car disappeared down the road, the principal remained outside a moment longer, absorbing the beauty of the horizon. This place had become a haven not just for Regal Thunder, but also for those longing to reconnect with lost parts of themselves. Inside, Mr. Alvarez lingered near the stable as the last students departed. A gentle breeze stirred the orchard trees, scattering leaves along the path. He reflected on Belinda's stories, recalling the quiet awe in her eyes as she touched Regal Thunder. In that moment, he felt certain they were doing more than adopting a horse. They were providing a living memorial for everyone who once believed in something noble, something worth saving. A rustling in the distance drew his attention. He glimpsed a silhouette near the far fence, a figure moving swiftly toward the road. His pulse jolted, but when he blinked, the shape was gone, possibly just a parent or passerby. Still, a tight knot returned to his stomach. The shadows lengthened in the waning light, and he found himself wondering whether those who lurked in secrecy might someday confront them outright. Shivering, he murmured a goodbye to Regal Thunder, then locked the stable door. In the hush that followed, the orchard seemed to whisper promises of safety and threats of intrusion all at once. The following morning, Oakfield Elementary found itself awash in a swirl of autumn leaves and excited chatter. The air held a crisp edge, and parents arriving for drop-off commented on the golden foliage that draped the school grounds. Yet even in this pleasant scene, an undercurrent of tension quietly rippled. A few staff members had spotted a lone figure skirting the far fence the previous evening, though no one could identify who it was. Mrs. Collins, determined not to alarm the children, reminded her colleagues to remain vigilant. She had the police sergeant's number at the ready and had asked him to increase patrols around the property. Mr. Alvarez, as always, arrived early to care for Regal Thunder. The horse greeted him with a soft nicker, ears perking up at the sound of the caretaker's familiar footsteps. After providing fresh water and hay, Mr. Alvarez ran a hand down Regal Thunder's withers, searching for any sign of discomfort. The old horse seemed content. His appetite remained steady, and his coat shone with the subtle health that had taken weeks to foster. Even so, the caretaker couldn't dismiss his nagging worries, which lingered after glimpsing that strange silhouette. The memory of it snagged in his mind like a briar on fabric. Classes began smoothly that day. Students participated in reading groups and math drills, the usual hum of learning filling the corridors. During a mid-morning break, Ms. Hampton brought her third graders to the orchard for a mindful nature walk. They tiptoed among fallen leaves, scribbling descriptions in their journals of how the crisp air felt against their cheeks. Nearby, Regal Thunder occasionally appeared between the stable door and the pasture fence, as if curiously observing them. The children kept their distance, mindful of Miss Hampton's gentle reminders, but they waved at him, and the horse flicked his tail in a calm, almost companionable way. Inside the main building, Mrs. Collins scanned emails and phone messages. There were updates from local sponsors helping with feed costs, a follow-up note from Belinda Marsden promising a visit next month, and even a polite query from a documentary filmmaker who had heard rumors about the hero horse. Sighing, the principal set that last request aside. While she appreciated the outpouring of support, she worried it might invite unwanted scrutiny. For all they knew, the mysterious figure at the fence was someone who had also heard the stories, and perhaps had darker intentions. She resolved to keep the school's focus on education and the horse's well-being, not on publicity. Lunchtime arrived amid a flurry of laughter and the clatter of trays in the cafeteria. Mr. Alvarez patrolled the perimeter, pausing near the orchard to scan the horizon. No suspicious vehicles lingered, and only a gentle breeze stirred the branches overhead. A handful of older students from Mr. Price's class joined him outside, citing a project to collect fallen twigs and leaves for an art assignment. He supervised their search, smiling at their chatter about autumn colors. Yet a prickling sensation haunted him, as though unseen eyes watched from the hedges. When the final bell rang that afternoon, most children flocked to the front gates, eager to head home. A few lingered near the stable, quietly discussing the tasks they might do to help. One boy, Jonah, offered to sweep the stable's outer walkway. Another, Lena, asked if she could refill Regal Thunder's water bucket. Mr. Alvarez, touched by their kindness, let them assist under his careful watch. The horse observed the children's industriousness with mild curiosity, lowering his head to sniff at Jonah's broom bristles. Lena giggled as she hauled the water bucket, determined to show she could handle it herself. By the time they finished, the area around the stable looked neat and welcoming. Just as Mr. Alvarez was locking the stable door for the evening, a sudden commotion sounded near the main parking lot. Raised voices echoed against the school's brick walls. Worried, he urged the children to head on home and hurried to investigate. Rounding the corner, he found Mrs. Collins engaged in a tense conversation with a tall man in a dark coat. The man's face was partially hidden by the brim of a cap, and he gestured angrily. A couple of teachers hovered nearby, unease evident in their stances. "I'm telling you," the man said in a clipped tone, "that horse shouldn't be here. If you had any sense, you'd hand him over to the rightful authorities." Mrs. Collins stayed calm. "We've legally adopted Regal Thunder. There is no recognized owner contesting that, and I'm not aware of any authorities who have a valid claim. Now, if you have documentation, feel free to present it." The stranger let out a derisive laugh. "Sometimes official paperwork doesn't reflect the real picture, lady. Things go missing in war zones. You have no idea what that horse has been used for. He might pose a danger." Mr. Alvarez stepped forward, voice firm. "He's not dangerous. He's been under veterinary care for weeks, and we've had 0 incidents with the children." The man shot the caretaker a cold glance. "And you are?" "Someone who cares for this horse," Mr. Alvarez replied, refusing to be intimidated. "If you have proof of ownership or any credible claim, please share it. Otherwise, you're trespassing on school property." At that, the stranger's posture stiffened. He glared at Mrs. Collins one last time, then turned on his heel and stalked toward a sleek car at the far end of the lot. As he drove off, his tires screeched in a display of defiance. A hush fell over the small group of staff who had gathered. Mrs. Collins exhaled, pressing a hand to her temple. "Well, that was unpleasant," she said softly. "Another self-proclaimed authority. Do you think he's connected to the calls we've been receiving?" "It's likely," Mr. Alvarez said, though he wished the answer were different. "I'd better notify the police sergeant. This time we have a clear description of him." Mrs. Collins nodded, then turned to the lingering teachers. "Thank you for your help, but let's wrap up for the day. It's best if everyone heads home." They dispersed, exchanging troubled looks, while the principal and caretaker walked together back into the building. Mrs. Collins dialed the local station, calmly reporting the incident. The sergeant assured her he'd send an officer to take a statement, but suggested they remain cautious. "We'll do more nighttime patrols," he promised. That evening, Mr. Alvarez found himself pacing near the stable, mind racing with what-ifs. He recalled the man's cold eyes, the bitterness in his voice. "Sometimes official paperwork doesn't reflect the real picture," he had said, as though implying Regal Thunder belonged to someone powerful enough to bypass normal procedures. The caretaker's fists clenched as he vowed not to let intimidation unravel the new life they'd built for the horse. A soft sound behind him made him spin around, heart-pounding, but it was only Regal Thunder shifting in his stall, his hooves making gentle thuds against the straw. Mr. Alvarez sighed, stepping inside. He rubbed the horse's neck, speaking in a low voice. "Don't worry, old friend. We'll keep you safe. Whatever your past was, you deserve peace now." Regal Thunder swished his tail, gazing at the caretaker with what seemed like quiet understanding. As darkness settled, Mrs. Collins brought a small portable radio to the stable, wanting to keep communication open with the police officer scheduled to patrol. She plugged it in near the feed room, Static crackled, then a firm voice identified itself as Officer Duran on duty. Mrs. Collins and Mr. Alvarez exchanged a relieved nod. If that stranger returned, he would face immediate scrutiny. They refused to let fear disrupt the gentle bond Regal Thunder had forged with the school. Hours ticked by in relative calm. After dinner, Mr. Alvarez sat alone in the stable, a single lantern illuminating the wooden walls. He read a worn paperback, glancing up every so often to check on the horse. Regal Thunder alternated between standing and lying down to rest, occasionally nickering at the caretaker's presence. Outside, the orchard rustled in the wind. A rhythmic whisper that might have lulled them both to sleep had tension not hung so heavily in the air. Near midnight, the radio crackled again, signaling Officer Duran's presence on the far side of the property. Mr. Alvarez replied that all was quiet. The caretaker then decided it was safe enough to head to his cottage, leaving the radio behind for Mrs. Collins in case she wanted to continue monitoring. She insisted she'd manage fine, grateful for his vigilance. With a final pat on Regal Thunder's muzzle, Mr. Alvarez exited the stable. He took a wide loop around the orchard, scanning for any movement, but nothing stirred except the faint silhouettes of trees swaying. At last he slipped into his cottage. Exhaustion tugged at him. All day the confrontation replayed in his mind, from the stranger's sneer to his cryptic insinuations. Though every legal measure was on their side, a single unresolved question gnawed at him. Who truly held the deeper claim to Regal Thunder's past? And would they stop at threats, or attempt something more drastic? That night, as the caretaker tossed and turned, the silhouette of that tall man seemed to loom in every nightmare. Sometime before dawn, he jerked awake to the faint hum of a patrol car passing by. After that, he couldn't sleep, haunted by the possibility that unscrupulous people might do anything to seize what they believed was theirs. With a heavy sigh, he dressed and headed outdoors, determined to keep watch until the first rays of sunlight put his fears to rest. All the while, he prayed that Regal Thunder's new home would remain a sanctuary, shielded from those who viewed the horse only as a possession rather than a living soul who had already earned the right to peace. When dawn finally came, Mr. Alvarez felt as though he had only just closed his eyes. Slivers of pale light crept in through his cottage's thin curtains, casting long shadows across the floor. The night's uneasy vigil still weighed on him, but he forced himself to stand, brush the sleep from his eyes, and gather the resolve to face whatever the new day might bring. After splashing cold water on his face, he stepped outside into brisk air, his breath forming small clouds. A faint layer of frost shimmered on the grass, and the horizon glowed with the first promise of sunrise. He headed straight for the stable, where Regal Thunder was already stirring. The horse whinnied softly at the caretaker's approach. Mr. Alvarez forced a reassuring smile, shaking off the last remnants of his restless night. "Morning, buddy," he murmured. "Let's get you fed." He opened the barn door to a swirl of chilly wind, then carefully refilled Regal Thunder's feed bucket, checking the horse's eyes and ears for any signs of distress. As always, the gentle creature seemed calmer than anyone else on campus. If he sensed danger, he didn't show it. Mrs. Collins arrived soon after, wearing a thick coat and a purposeful expression. She appeared more resolute than worried, though Mr. Alvarez suspected she'd had as little sleep as he had. They exchanged quick greetings before she dashed inside to finalize her schedule. Soon, teachers began trickling into their classrooms and the corridors filled with children stamping their feet to shake off the cold. Life returned to its familiar patterns, yet an undercurrent of watchfulness ran beneath each routine. Before first bell, the local police sergeant arrived. His presence was both a comfort and a reminder that the stranger's threats were not to be dismissed. He met briefly with Mrs. Collins in her office, taking notes on the previous day's confrontation. Mr. Alvarez was called in to add whatever details he could recall, though there wasn't much beyond the man's imposing height and harsh tone. "We'll keep a closer eye on the area," the sergeant promised, tucking his notebook into his jacket. "Let me know immediately if he or anyone else comes around questioning you again. We'll respond as needed." With that, the school day began in earnest. Classes whirred, as though trying to brush away the tension by focusing on spelling quizzes, art projects, and geometry problems. The children, for the most part, remained blissfully unaware of any lurking threat. They were far more interested in reading stories, swapping lunches, or chatting about the leaves carpeting the ground outside. Several volunteers, including older students, helped Mr. Alvarez clean up around the stable. A few teachers assigned short, reflective writing prompts about what it meant to care for an animal. The caretaker overheard enthusiastic discussions about compassion and responsibility, reminders of the positive impact Regal Thunder continued to have on the school's values. Just before lunch, a surprise visitor arrived. Garrett Jones stepped out of a rental car wearing a windbreaker and clutching a slim briefcase. He greeted Mrs. Collins warmly, saying he'd driven overnight from his home state after hearing about recent disturbances. "I've had my ear to the ground," he explained. "Word travels fast in veteran circles. Someone's been spreading rumors that your horse was illegally obtained. I wanted to offer any help I can, confirm your legal standing, or if needed, reach out to more of my contacts." He paused, gaze serious. "Frankly, some folks see a war horse like Regal Thunder as a valuable symbol. They might try underhanded tactics to claim him." Mrs. Collins led Garrett to her office, where Mr. Alvarez joined them. Garrett opened his briefcase and produced several files. "These are archived records I've managed to track down. They show the stable's official dissolution, plus notes indicating Regal Thunder was missing in action. There's nothing here that suggests anyone still has rightful ownership." He tapped a printed page. "However, some unscrupulous people might pretend they do, especially if they believe there's prestige or money to gain from controlling the horse's narrative." Mr. Alvarez frowned. "Prestige or money? We're just a small school taking care of a horse who needed help." Garrett nodded sympathetically. "I know, but I've seen how certain collectors or self-styled historians operate. They think they're entitled to anything connected to a famous unit. Once rumors start, they might spin wild claims about stolen cavalry property. It's nonsense, but it can cause trouble if not addressed firmly." Mrs. Collins exhaled slowly. "We have adoption papers filed with the county clerk plus supporting documents from our vet. The police are aware. Is there anything else we can do?" "Stay transparent," Garrett advised. "If anyone threatens you, refer them to law enforcement. If they bring up historical ownership, I'll happily counter with this documentation. Above all, don't give them an inch." They shook on this plan, relief evident in Mrs. Collins's posture. "Thank you, Garrett. It means a lot that you'd come all this way again." After lunch, Garrett requested a few minutes to visit Regal Thunder. Together, he and Mr. Alvarez walked to the stable. The old horse, sensing a familiar presence, lifted his head and nickered. Garrett reached out a careful hand, letting Regal Thunder smell him before stroking his mane. "You look better every time I see you," Garrett murmured. "Safe and content. That's how it should be." Mr. Alvarez nodded in quiet agreement. The horse stood between them, blinking peacefully, as though wholly unaffected by the swirl of anxieties gripping everyone else. A short while later, while Garrett and Mr. Alvarez were inspecting the stable door's new locks, a silver pickup truck pulled into the lot. Out stepped a wiry man in a heavy coat, looking distinctly out of place among the departing parents. Mr. Alvarez stiffened, recalling the tall stranger from before, but this wasn't him. The newcomer peered around, appearing mildly lost, then marched straight toward the stable fence. Garrett and Mr. Alvarez exchanged wary looks, but approached him calmly. "Can we help you?" Mr. Alvarez asked. The man's gaze flicked between them, "Name's Cromwell," he said curtly. "I hear there's a horse around here that might have once been in our outfit overseas. I was told to check." He crossed his arms, hunching his shoulders. His demeanor bordered on confrontational, though not openly hostile. "I served with the cavalry a few years back. We lost track of some mounts." He eyed Regal Thunder. "Could be one of ours." Garrett stepped forward. "You have official records, Mr. Cromwell?" Cromwell scowled. "Not on me. But it stands to reason if he's from the same deployment, we'd want to see if he belongs in our care." "Which unit?" Garrett pressed. The newcomer shifted uneasily. "That's private information. Anyway, how do I know you folks aren't hiding something? War horses ain't exactly cheap, and some of them come with a price tag." At that, Mr. Alvarez's frustration flared. "He's not for sale," he said, voice steady but firm. "We have legal ownership and we're not hiding anything. If you have genuine proof, bring it to law enforcement." Cromwell's face hardened. "That how it is? Maybe I'll come back with the right documents and friends." Without another word, he stalked off to his truck. A moment later, the engine roared, and the vehicle disappeared down the road, leaving Garrett and Mr. Alvarez standing tense and silent. "Another one," Garrett muttered, shaking his head. "He knows just enough to sound credible, but offers nothing in return. I've seen the type. Vague insinuations, no real proof." Mr. Alvarez let out a troubled sigh. "He might be connected to the other man. Or maybe they're working separately, each chasing some notion of value." Garrett nodded. "Regardless, don't let them bully you. You have the law on your side and you've got me to counter their claims. But keep your guard up." When Mrs. Collins heard of this new encounter, her lips pressed into a thin line. "This is starting to feel more organized than coincidence. I'll keep the police updated. In the meantime, let's restrict access to the stable during off hours. We'll station a staff member if needed." That night, Mr. Alvarez stayed in the stable well past sundown, performing small chores that didn't really need doing, stacking feed, checking every bolt, brushing Regal Thunder's coat in slow, soothing strokes. He needed the routine to calm his nerves. Each time the barn door creaked, he imagined another stranger with half-truths and ominous hints. Regal Thunder, oblivious to such fears, gave a lazy flick of his ear. The caretaker felt a small pang of envy for the horse's innocence. At around 9 o'clock, Mrs. Collins brought a thermos of coffee, setting it on a workbench near Mr. Alvarez's elbow. "You're going above and beyond," she said quietly, watching as he smoothed a blanket across Regal Thunder's back. "We all appreciate it." He shrugged, not pausing his work. "I owe him this. He found us when he needed help. Now I want to be sure no one takes him away by force." Mrs. Collins gazed at the old war horse, standing serenely under a lantern's glow. "We'll make sure he stays. Don't lose faith." Mr. Alvarez nodded, but remained silent. Outside, the moon rose, illuminating the orchard trees and sending elongated shadows dancing across the barn walls. The caretaker recalled a time before Regal Thunder arrived, when his job was merely routine. Now it felt like a calling, one that demanded courage and vigilance. In a quiet moment, he stroked the horse's mane, recalling Garrett's words about unscrupulous people. They would do whatever it took to prove they had rights to a creature who had already given so much. With a resolute breath, Mr. Alvarez whispered, "I'm not backing down," as Regal Thunder bobbed his head as though in agreement. Outside, the wind stirred, carrying the faint rustle of leaves into the barn. The horse and caretaker stood together, unified in a silent promise to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. A week of tense calm settled over Oakfield Elementary. On the surface, daily life continued as usual. Children practiced spelling drills, the soccer team prepared for a friendly tournament, and teachers navigated the typical ups and downs of school days. But beneath that normalcy ran a silent vigilance. Both Mr. Alvarez and Mrs. Collins took turns checking the stable at odd hours, and every staff member knew to look twice at unfamiliar faces lingering near the fence. Even the students sensed that something hung in the air, though they couldn't name it. They responded by flocking around Regal Thunder, as if their collective affection could shield him from threats unseen. Early on a Wednesday morning, a biting wind swept through the orchard, scattering leaves across the fields. Mr. Alvarez had just finished grooming Regal Thunder when he heard someone call his name from the far side of the fence. Heart-pounding, he glanced up, half expecting to see another stranger with veiled accusations. Instead, he found two uniformed police officers approaching, faces drawn but polite. They explained that they wanted to perform a quick inspection of the grounds, having received tips about possible trespassers in the vicinity. With practiced caution, Mr. Alvarez led them around the orchard, along the property's boundary, and then back to the stable. No footprints, no sign of tampering. Just the quiet hum of a school morning. The officers left with a promise to remain on alert. Around midday, as teachers wrapped up their lessons before lunch, a faint commotion erupted near the main entrance. Mrs. Collins had just stepped out of her office when she spotted the same tall, dark-coated stranger who had confronted her days earlier. He was marching through the foyer with grim determination, trailed by a wiry man in a heavy jacket. Cromwell, the one who had arrived in the silver pickup. Together they ignored the receptionist's pleas to sign in, heading straight for the corridor that led to the orchard. Mrs. Collins rushed forward, placing herself in their path. "You can't simply barge in," she said firmly. "This is a school." The taller man lifted a piece of paper clutched in his hand. "We have business," he snapped. "Official business." Cromwell, standing just behind him, nodded stiffly. A cluster of teachers gathered, a mixture of confusion and resolve in their faces. Sensing confrontation, Mrs. Collins signaled to a staff member to call the police, but the tall man only glared. "We've found records," he claimed. "We can prove that horse belongs to a private estate that once held the cavalry's assets. You people are harboring stolen property." At that, Mrs. Collins shook her head. "We have a legal adoption on file. Whatever you think you found is either outdated or invalid." She kept her tone even, though her heart thudded. Cromwell brandished a folder stuffed with photocopies. "It's all here. Deeds, rosters, stable logs. This horse was never lawfully released." He tried to step around her, but she held her ground. Hearing the raised voices, Mr. Alvarez hurried inside, just in time to see the men attempting to push past Mrs. Collins. Garrett Jones, who was visiting again for a research update, appeared at the end of the hall. He strode up, scanning the documents with a skeptical eye. "Rosters from more than a decade ago," Garrett murmured. "No signatures, no official stamps. These look like incomplete files, missing entire sections. Hardly conclusive." The stranger's face darkened. "Who are you to judge?" "I'm a historian who's already verified that Regal Thunder was classified missing and presumed lost after the cavalry unit dissolved," Garrett replied. "If you had legitimate evidence, you'd be dealing with a court, not storming into a school." Cromwell's jaw tightened. "You talk big, but wait until lawyers get involved. The rightful estate owners won't let some random elementary school keep a valuable warhorse. We have connections in high places." A wave of fury rippled through Mr. Alvarez. "He's not a commodity," he snapped, stepping closer. "He's a living being, cared for by us legally. If you try to remove him, you'll be breaking the law." At that moment, two uniformed police officers arrived, summoned by the staff's frantic call. The tension in the hallway spiked. Students peered around corners, their eyes wide. Teachers urged them back, forming a protective barrier. The taller man waved his documents at the officers, speaking in rapid bursts about rightful ownership and property rights. The officers calmly and methodically examined the papers. Mrs. Collins handed over copies of the adoption records. Garrett contributed his own file explaining how the stable had closed without specifying any living claimants. The lead officer flipped through the stranger's folder, frowning. "This is incomplete," he said. "You have no court order, no official request from a recognized authority. Meanwhile, the school has up-to-date paperwork and veterinarian attestations of ownership." He looked up, meeting the tall man's furious glare. "If you have a legitimate dispute, you need to take it through the proper channels. Trespassing on school grounds and making threats isn't the way to handle this." Cromwell opened his mouth to protest, but his partner elbowed him. Clearly, they recognized they were outnumbered. The tall man stuffed his folder back under his arm. "You'll regret this," he hissed, voice low enough that only Mr. Alvarez and Mrs. Collins heard. Then, spinning on his heel, he and Cromwell stalked toward the exit, trailed by the police. The pair muttered curses under their breath, their frustration obvious. Before disappearing beyond the front doors, they threw one last glare at Mr. Alvarez. He stared back, refusing to show fear. Silence settled like dust in the aftermath. Mrs. Collins inhaled slowly, then turned to the officers, offering heartfelt thanks. They advised the school to keep logs of any further contact or suspicious behavior, then left to escort the men off the property. Garrett ran a hand over his face, relief etched in his features. "We need to stay vigilant," he said. "Those two might try a different approach. But at least for now, the law is on your side." Mr. Alvarez found himself trembling slightly. He sank against the wall, adrenaline coursing through him. Mrs. Collins placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did well," she murmured. "I'm proud of how we handled that." Their eyes met, and a wordless understanding passed between them. Regal Thunder's safety meant more to them than any fear those men could instill. In the days that followed, the school remained on alert, but no further attempts to seize Regal Thunder materialized. Word spread through the town about the confrontation, and a surge of community backing rose in its wake. Families volunteered to keep watch in the evenings, driving by the orchard to ensure no suspicious vehicles lurked. Local businesses displayed small, "Support Regal Thunder" signs in their windows. Some parents even formed an informal neighborhood patrol, promising to report anything unusual to the school and the police. Garrett stayed in town a bit longer, combing through additional archives in case the men returned with new claims. To everyone's relief, official documents consistently showed that Regal Thunder was declared lost property, with no subsequent claims filed. The caretaker, as well as the principal, felt a growing confidence that they had weathered the worst of the storm. Late one afternoon, Garrett received a phone call from a high-ranking ex-cavalry officer who verified that every living horse from the old stable, except Regal Thunder, had been accounted for or humanely retired. "He's yours," the officer said with a note of admiration. "Consider it an honor to protect his legacy." Once Garrett shared this final confirmation with Mrs. Collins and Mr. Alvarez, an immense weight lifted from the school's collective shoulders. Standing in the stable beside the old horse, they could almost feel the shift, as though a chain had snapped. Mr. Alvarez let out a laugh of sheer relief. "Hear that, big guy?" he said, scratching Regal Thunder's forelock. "We won." Regal Thunder bobbed his head, as if echoing the sentiment. Garrett, leaning against a post, smiled. "I'll be heading home soon," he said softly, "but I'll make sure to visit again. After all, you've got a national hero right here." Mrs. Collins let out a quiet laugh. "We just see him as our beloved school friend." In the final weeks of autumn, Oakfield Elementary regained its serene rhythm. With the legal threats vanquished, the staff and students returned to focusing on academics, crafts, and the simple joy of crisp fall mornings. Parents continued to drop off small donations, and Mrs. Collins spearheaded plans for a modest garden beside the stable. There, children would plant flowers to honor Regal Thunder's resilience. By the time the last leaves fell, The stable was adorned with handmade signs expressing gratitude and love for the old warhorse who had forever changed their community. On the eve of winter break, a light snow dusted the orchard. After the students were dismissed, Mr. Alvarez went to the barn to spread extra bedding for warmth. Regal Thunder, standing in a soft halo of lamplight, seemed especially content. As the caretaker adjusted the horse's blanket, his breath came in small plumes. "You're home for good now," he whispered. "Nobody's taking you away." Outside, the wind hummed through bare branches, but the stable felt welcoming and safe. The ghosts of conflict had receded, leaving in their wake a quiet peace that belonged to both man and horse. Mr. Alvarez closed the door gently and let himself smile. Regal Thunder was truly theirs, a gift of second chances, a symbol of steadfast loyalty, and an enduring reminder that unity could conquer fear. And so, in the winter hush, their story reached a place of calm at last, the warmth of a shared commitment carrying them into each new dawn.